Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 73 of Coach Bennett's podcast. That's right, 73 of Coach Bennett's podcast. This one is entitled, How to Get Faster. That's right. I already know the title. I already know the name of the episode, How to Get Faster. Don't worry, I did spend some time trying to get witty, thinking of a couple different options, but then I was like, this is actually a waste of time because the title is How to Get Faster. So don't mess with something that works, right? Or unless, you want it to be better. And then you should mess with it. And that's a little, free piece of coaching there. A lot of people say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. It's like, well, not everything has to be broken in order to be fixed or improved upon. You know what I'm talking about? That's right. So anyway, let's get into the episode because my goal here is for this not to take too long. I would like this to be one of the faster episodes. Now, why is that? Well, because everything I'm going to talk about could be its own episode. Every single thing I talk about could be its own chapter. And yes, we'll get into it. But if you wanted me to go deep on everything that I talk about today, this is going to be like a 6, 7, 8 hour podcast. So what'll probably happen is I'll break them down individually over the next couple of months. You know what I mean? Or maybe we could do a best runner ever weekend, which Coach Tammie, that's Coach Bennett the Greater, we've been talking about having like brews, best runner ever weekends. And if you don't know what a best runner ever is, it's basically a group that we've put together a couple times in the past. They last a month and we go over different topics. And this is something we thought about where why don't we actually break it down where we still have BREs, which would be month-long community groups where we get together for 4 calls. We answer questions. We have the ability where everyone can have a space where they can talk to each other. But let's maybe have weekend versions where it's like one day and it's 90 minutes and it's a short and sweet topic that we can talk about, we can answer questions about. But anyway, that's something we can cover a different time when we actually have a BRE or a brew set up. But my point is, I'm going to be going through a whole bunch of different things, okay? A whole bunch of different topics, a whole bunch of different chapter titles about how you can get faster. And I'm going to talk about them. And then I'm going to move on. And what'll happen is, like I said, over the next couple of months and maybe on some weekends, we're going to dig really deep on some of these things. But first, let me just say right off the bat, we're going to open up the dictionary. You know it. I know it. We're opening up the dictionary because we have a couple things we got to define. And the first thing I want to define is the word speed. And here's definition 1 for speed. Rapidity in moving, going, traveling, proceeding, or performing. Swiftness. I'm going to say it again. Speed, definition 1. Rapidity in moving, going, traveling, proceeding, or performing. Swiftness. Now, that word rapidity isn't used very often. It's just rapid and then rapidity. Anyway, rapidity in moving, going, traveling, proceeding, or performing. Swiftness. I get it. You get it. It's a great first definition, but you know me, I'm a second definition type of guy. So let's go to that second definition. Relative rapidity in moving, going. Okay, not much difference between the first two other than that all-important word, relative. We're going to come back to that. I love that second definition. And that word relative, that's huge as a coach. It's huge in my coaching with all of you. Relative rapidity in moving and going. Okay, but that's not the only word I want to define. I also want to define the word fast. Okay, so let's go to fast. Fast is moving or able to move, operate, function, or take effect quickly. I'll read it again.
moving or able to move, operate, function, or take effect quickly. Okay, that's a good first definition. Kind of boring if you ask me. So let's go to definition 2, okay? Done in comparatively little time. Let's say that again. Done in comparatively little time. Now, what's the word there that I'm going to focus on? In comparatively, okay? Comparatively little time. All right? Remember the first word that I wanted to focus on in that definition of speed that I love so much? Definition 2, relative. Well, in fast, definition 2, the word I want to focus on is comparatively. All right, now let's go to that adverb faster. All right? That adverb faster, definition 1, quick, swiftly, rapidly. All right, I mean, that makes sense. Faster is quick, swiftly, rapidly. Got it. Now, if you go down to definition 6, okay, how cool is this? Ahead of the correct or announced time. I love that. It's faster than the correct or the announced time, which may not be correct. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. We're going to come back to these definitions in a little bit, but that word relative and that other word comparatively are massive when we're talking about fast and faster. And the reason why is because I tell all of you all the time, I know that you're fast. And I know that you can go faster because all of you tell me how slow you are. And you can't be slow unless it's relative to something else, which would be something faster. You can't go slower unless you have the ability to go faster than that pace that is slower. You have to have both. So boom to all of you that say, no, I'm only a slow runner. No. If you're a slow runner, that means you are also, relatively speaking, in comparison, also a faster runner. Now listen, you can define what you think fast means in terms of the numbers on your watch. That's up to you, okay? It's a dangerous exercise. I just want you to realize that. And if it's going to be an exercise that diminishes what you're trying to do, then it's a foolish exercise, okay? But if you want to personalize it, if you want to take ownership of your running, if you want to own your speeds, which means own your slow and own your fast, then you have the ability to see that, yes, you can run slow in relation to how fast you could also run. You have the ability to go faster in comparison to your ability to run slower. So what I want you to do is really do a pause or take a time out, think about how you define these words like speed, fast, and faster before we even get into this podcast. Because if you have a self-sabotage type of attitude, if you have I'm going to diminish my own abilities and accomplishments and achievements, if you're the type of person that starts by saying you suck at running and you're slow at running, I just want you to pause and realize that if you run consistently, if you take ownership of your fitness, if you train intelligently, then you have the ability, the potential, really, to suck less. You have the capability to run fast and faster than what you would deem slow. That's all I'm saying. And if that rocks your world, good, because it sounds like you need to get your world rocked. So let's get into the rest of the episode now that we've covered what it means when we talk about speed, fast, and faster, and how your relationship with those words play a major role in what comes next, which is running to get faster. Okay? So I do want to say this also, which I think is super important before we even get into how to get faster. There's a lot of different ways to get faster. Yes, we're going to go over them, but it means a lot of different things. Okay? If I'm talking to someone who wants to get faster in the 100-meter dash, we're going to be talking about and doing some different things than if someone says, I want to run a faster marathon. Okay? And I'll tell you what, it's going to be different from someone who's run a marathon and wants to run a second marathon compared to someone who's never run a marathon. We're also going to be talking about different things when someone just says, I want to get faster, meaning I'm new to running or I've been running for a while and I would like to just get faster in general, meaning my recovery runs and my easy days and when I go out to the park with some friends or when I do a long run, just in general, I want to get faster, which is also going to be a slightly different conversation from someone that says, I want to run a faster mile, a faster 5K. I mean, these are all slightly different conversations. Now, the ingredients are more or less the same, okay? But the amount of each ingredient and the focus, or I guess stress on each ingredient is going to be different. Now, this doesn't mean running suddenly is complicated. Running is not complicated. It's the runners that are complicated. The ingredients are very straightforward. The amount of each ingredient, and like I said, the stress or focus on each ingredient is dependent on the athlete and what they're trying to do and what their inherent strengths and weaknesses are, because we all have inherent strengths and we all have inherent weaknesses. Once again, let me pause here for a second. If you're someone that thinks you only have weaknesses, I need you to take another timeout. We're kind of running out of timeouts here. I mean, I think we're allowed 5. Are we allowed 5? We're allowed 3. Okay, we're allowed 3 timeouts. But let's take a timeout here also. If you're someone who thinks they have no strengths, we need to stop for a moment. Okay? If you think you only have weaknesses, well, then maybe one of your strengths is your ability to be critical, which can be a great strength, to be critical. Maybe we have to make it a even stronger strength by making sure that criticism does not turn into something that beats you down as opposed to lift you up. Because that's what criticism should do. It should be, I'm going to be critical of you, and in doing so, I'm going to give you a pathway on how to improve. Sometimes that criticism is really not criticism. It's more, I'm just being a jerk, and I want to beat you down. That's not real healthy criticism, okay? That is wildly unhealthy criticism, and like I said, I don't even know if it qualifies as just criticism. It's just, and that's not what you want, right? I mean, it's the same thing whether you're in a classroom or you're on a playing field, all right? As an athlete or as a student, you're looking for criticism from those people that are there, and their job is to serve you by helping you improve. Which means, yes, tell me my weaknesses, but also tell me how to strengthen them. Tell me what I'm doing wrong so I can start to do it right. And tell me how I can work on this so I can improve, all right? So again, we have one more time out if we need it, but let's get into how you can get faster, because this is one of the most common questions I get. I'm going to start with what I think is maybe a Captain Obvious thing, but oddly enough, I don't know if people realize how obvious it is, which is run and run consistently. Not run or run consistently. Like you got to run consistently. If you want to improve your speed, if you want to have your fast be faster, and that's an important component here because you have to own the fact that, yes, you already do have the ability to run fast. Remember, comparably speaking, relatively speaking, you already have that ability. What you're asking is, how can I get faster, or how can I run fast for longer, right? So what you need to do is just come to the truth, which is pretty straightforward, I think, of you have to run, obviously. But when I say that, that means run consistently. If you're running wildly inconsistently, then it's going to be very difficult to build any of the things from a physical standpoint that running allows you to build, like confidence or endurance or speed. If you run every other month, it's going to be difficult to build speed. All right. It's also going to be difficult to measure your progression, right? I mean, how do you do that if all you're trying to do is once every other month or once every 3 weeks, or sometimes you run 4 days in 1 week and then you run once in the next week and then you don't run at all in the third week and then you run twice in the next week. It's really hard to do what you need to do. And that relative and in comparison, that's not just about your pace. That's also in measuring the progression of the runs you're doing, the types of runs you're doing, because one of the exercises that is really important is comparing your fitness, comparing the workouts you're doing to previous workouts you've done. And in doing so, you can in many ways schedule out or at least anticipate what you should be asking of yourself going forward based on the progression that you're going through. All right, there's always a gray area. There's always adjustments. Everything's written in pencil. But this is one of the exercises. When you run consistently, you're getting consistent feedback. You're learning consistently, okay? And that's really important from a coaching standpoint. And remember, don't separate yourself from the coach aspect. Even if you have a coach, don't separate yourself from that. Every day you run, you should be learning more about yourself as an athlete and as a runner and as a person. And in doing so, you should become a better coach for yourself. Okay? And if you want to look at yourself as the assistant coach to your head coach, that's fine. But for many of us, we should also be trying to look at ourselves as our own head coaches. All right, so you want to run and you want to run consistently. Now, this is a very loaded, opening salvo, because a lot of people are going to ask, well, how the heck do I run consistently? Okay, well, I'm ready for you. Diversity in training, diversity in training, diversity in training. Let me start with the speed runs. A lot of people think, because a lot of just, boilerplate training plans are just, we're going to do intervals. It's going to be like 8 by 200 this week, and then next week it's 8 by 400, and the week after that it's like 5 by 1,000, and then the week after that it's 6 by 800, and it's always the same pace, and it's always the same recovery. Or, and every Thursday is like a tempo run of slightly longer distance and at the exact same pace and the same structure. That's not what I mean by diversity, because within each of these types of speed runs, there's wildly diverse ways to attack them, to run them, to coach them, to experience them. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways to work at getting faster. Let's just start with intervals. There are long and short intervals. And what do I mean by intervals? I mean an interval of running based on either duration or distance. So that would mean, let's say, 400 meters. That's an interval. It's an interval of running. So I may say, I want you to go out and I want you to run for 400 meters after you've warmed up and stretched and done some strides and all that stuff. I want you to go out and I want you to run for 400 meters. And I want you to run at an 8 out of 10 effort, let's say. Now, if we want to get super technical, maybe that's somewhere around your mile pace or 1,500 meter pace, okay? So I want you to run a 400 at that pace. That's your running interval. Then there's a recovery interval. That recovery interval could be a set distance, or I want you to slow jog for 200 meters, whatever that may be. Maybe it takes you a minute, maybe it takes you 2 minutes, maybe it takes you 3 minutes, whatever. That's you and the coach, you can decide that. Or it may be a set duration, where I may say, okay, I want you to run 400 meters at an 8 out of 10 effort, and then I want you to take 2 minutes rest. And then we're going to run another one. Another 400 meters at that 8 out of 10. Okay, so that's a running interval, a recovery interval, a running interval. Now you can do that. You could say we're going to do 8 400 intervals with 8 2-minute duration of recovery between all of them. That's what we're going to do. But you could mix it up too, right? You could have 8 intervals at 8 out of 10 effort, and they're all at 2-minute recovery, except after number 4, you get more recovery. Maybe it's 3 minutes, or maybe after 4, you get less recovery. It's 30 seconds. Oof, that's going to be hard. And then we go back to 2. You can play with that. Now, why would you do that? Well, maybe you want to have the back half of the workout be a little bit harder. You're going to want you to string together 2 on very short recovery, and then you get back to 2 minutes recovery, which is a healthy amount of recovery, and see, can we recover from a debt, a recovery debt, and still do the workout? There's all sorts of ways that you can manipulate the workout, where you can adjust the workout, you can change the workout, you can mix up the actual distances of the running intervals. Maybe it's a 400, and then it's an 800, then it's a 400 again, and then it's a 200, and then a 200. And then you can play with the recoveries in between. And those different distance intervals, well, you can change the paces. Maybe the 400 is at mile pace, and the 800 is at 10K pace, and the 200s is at mile pace again. You're just mixing it up. You're screwing around. You're having some fun with it. And you're thinking, what am I working on? What am I taxing here from an athletic standpoint, from a running standpoint? And what are the expectations? What are we trying to do here? And it's not just the physical side. There's also the mental side, right? You're trying to stress the athlete in a couple of different ways. The physical side as well as the mindful side. And there's a lot of different things that you can do, which I can go on forever about intervals. But I wanted to just start with the basic ones. There's another one that I love, which I call split intervals, where you're running part of that running interval, let's say it's 400, at one pace, and then you immediately go into another pace. So let's just use that 8 by 400. Well, let's say the first 200 of every 400 is at your 5K pace, or let's say a 6.5, 7 out of 10 effort. The second half of that 400, you immediately go into mile pace. That 8 or 9 out of 10 effort. So you go 200 meters at 7 effort, and then boom, you flip a switch and you go straight into picking it up. And I'll tell you why that's a really great workout, because it's hard to change paces when you're already running fast. Going from, recovery run pace to tempo run pace, that's a shift in pace. It's a shift in effort. It's a shift in speed. That's going to take some strength to change paces. But the faster you go, the harder it gets to go faster. So it's a really great way to have athletes work on turnover, work on strength to go from running fast to even faster, or faster to fastest. Now you got to be careful, but that's another great workout that mixes up intervals. Now we've just been talking about intervals, but we've gone over a lot of different ways to attack getting faster just using intervals, but there's so much more. There's so much more. Fartlek. Fartlek is speed play, right? Now, what is fartlek? Fartlek is a set duration or distance of running where you're constantly changing paces. And that does not mean you stop and have a recovery interval where you're walking or standing still, like in a track interval workout or just an intervals workout. What this means is those pace changes, it's constant. When you start a fartlek, you don't stop running until the fartlek's done. So it could be something, we'll just use something simple like a 10-minute fartlek, okay, that starts out as like 2 minutes at your 5K pace, and then 1 minute at your recovery pace, and then 2 minutes at your 5K pace, and 1 minute at your recovery pace, then 1 minute at your mile pace, and then 2 minutes at your recovery pace, then 1 minute at your mile pace. And guess what? You've just run for 10 minutes and you've changed paces a whole bunch of different times. You're fooling around with your speed play. Right? That's what fartlek is. It can be done by distance. It can be done by duration. You can have as many different paces and efforts in there as you want. You can play with how long each is. Sometimes, and I'll tell you a crazy workout, which I've talked about at an earlier podcast, maybe like a little over a year ago, was when I was running for the Nike Farm team out in Palo Alto at Stanford University. The coach at the time, Vin Lanana, would have the Stanford team, and they were the best men's and women's distance program in the United States at the time at the NCAA level. He would have them do a fartlek where they would run and he would blow a whistle, and I'm just making it up. He would blow the whistle twice and that would be 5K pace. But he wouldn't tell them how long they were going to be running at that pace. It could be 30 seconds. It could be 7 minutes. And then he would blow the whistle 3 times, and that would mean mile pace. They didn't know if it was 15 seconds or 2 minutes. And then he would blow the whistle once, and that meant recovery run pace. That could be a minute. It could be 10 minutes. They never knew. So he was working them in the classic fartlek fashion, but he was also taxing them a little bit more on that mindful and mental side, right? Because they had to callous themselves to the unknown, not knowing how long this push was going to be. But when you're racing, sometimes you don't know how long the push is going to go if you're racing somebody. Sometimes you don't know how taxing it's going to feel if you want to stay with a certain pace group. This is just another way of taking advantage of just the infinite variety you've got when you're making up speed workouts. You've got tempo runs. Tempo runs are great. They can be steady state. They could be progression. And what I mean by that is you have a tempo run effort, right? We can get into the details of that actually on another podcast, but you have a tempo run effort. We'll call it like a 6 effort, right? Maybe it's a 5.5 effort out of 10, somewhere in there. It's a hard recovery run kind of tempo, which just is awkward. It's uncomfortable, right? And you can do it where you warm up, you do your strides, and then boom, you get into that pace and you keep that pace, that steady tempo run pace for the entirety of the tempo. Could be a 4K tempo run, an 8K tempo run, could be a 10K, 12K tempo run. You just lock in. It's uncomfortable the entire time. That's what you do. It could be a progression type tempo where you start off a little slower than tempo run, you ease into tempo run pace, you end slightly faster than tempo run pace, and you've basically averaged a tempo run pace over the entirety of the distance or duration, but you were only running tempo run pace really for a small segment there because you started a little bit easier, ended a little bit harder, but all in all, it was a tempo run. It's a great opportunity to build strength, which we're going to get to later, which is one of the ingredients you need for speed. But you have tempo runs, you have hills, which you've heard me say because I've heard other people say, that they're speed work in disguise. There are certain things that you need to work on, that you get to work on when you're running hills that you don't naturally get to work on a flat surface because you're running on an incline. There are certain things your body is doing differently. There's less pounding, but it's also fighting gravity, right? I mean, you got to launch yourself up that hill. So there are give and takes with hill workouts, and you can do them in lots of different ways. You can have a long hill, a hill that's 3 minutes, 5 minutes long. You can do recovery runs on hilly runs and terrains, which are going to be building you as a runner, endurance-wise, mentally and physically, over the course of the run. You can do short hills, very short hills, 10, 15-second long hills, where you're really working on being explosive and trying to focus on your form and the power of driving your legs while you're running uphill. Not so easy, but it's a great way at working on your speed, which is very different than working out on a track or doing a tempo run or doing a fartlek. And then another one, which is, I think, a great way to build speed, work on speed, and have it be a part of your running all year round, are just strides. That's right, simple strides. 40-yard strides, 100-meter strides, 150-yard strides, 150-meter strides, whatever. The point is, strides are a great way prior to the run, after the run, to work on maintaining an element of your speed, okay? So if you're somebody who's maybe a little nervous about running fast, working on your speed, strides are a great gateway workout, all right? Because they're not even really a workout. Before the run, after the run, they're just a great thing to throw in there, add a little spice, you know what I mean? Because I'm a spicy guy, I love spice. So those are different ways to work on your speed in terms of speed runs. But I will say this, recovery runs and long runs work on your speed too. Like I mentioned earlier, you need endurance, you need strength to be fast when you want to be fast. And recovery runs and long runs, that's what they do. They build endurance. They callous you to that time on your feet, the duration and the distance of running. And on top of that, those recovery runs, what do? Well, they build fitness in between the hard days. They help you recover between those hard days. They help you recover and build endurance as you're getting ready in anticipation of another hard day. So don't think that those recovery runs and those long runs are not helping you get faster. They absolutely 100% are, okay? So just remember, it's one thing to be fast. It's another thing to be fast when you want to be, all right? And if you want to be fast when you want to be fast, then you're going to need to do some things in order to accomplish that, and that's build endurance. I'll put it this way, the fastest I've ever been in my life, was the end of freshman year in college. That was the fastest I'd ever been. Now, I never got to take advantage of it because I didn't have the endurance I needed to get me to the end of the race so I could take advantage of my speed because I was lazy. I was not doing the running I was supposed to do. I was not doing the distance and the duration that my coach was telling me to do. I was lazy. If I had done those things, I would have run much, much faster, even though I was the fastest I'd ever been, because I was showing up for practice and I was doing what I needed to do at practice, and I did nothing else. Those recovery runs, I was cutting short or I was skipping. Speed workouts, I showed up for. So when it came time to run a 1500, ooh yeah, I was there with 300 to go. And then when everyone else picked up the pace, changed gears, I had used all of my speed just to get to 300 meters to go. I had nothing left. I didn't have any endurance to get to 1200 meters. So I used up all my speed. You have both. What you want to do is use your endurance, your strength to get you to that point in the race where, guess what? The switch has been flipped. It's time to throw down. I couldn't throw down. I had nothing left. So just remember, it's nice to be fast. It's even better to be fast when you want to be. All right? Which means you got to do what you need to do. All right, another thing is strength training. And when I'm talking about strength training, I'm talking about becoming a stronger runner, meaning a stronger athlete. What I mean is doing stuff outside of running to help your running get better. We had an episode on how to get stronger, and I mentioned a couple strength exercises in there. And these are the things that, you would want to focus on. Things like strengthening your quads and your hamstrings, your lower legs, and yes, your upper body, because you're swinging those arms. And those arms do work, okay? Doesn't mean you've got to be doing insane things up top. But listen, it all helps. What you want to do is be a better athlete. And when you're trying to get faster, it takes a lot of effort and power to get faster, to work on that speed. So what you want to do is have the strength in order to be stronger than the work you're doing. And you can do that by working on building up your quads, your hips, your hamstrings, okay, hip flexors, calves, your lower legs. A lot of this is balance. A lot of these are things like squats. These are lunges. These are wall sits. These are calf raises. These are box jumps. A lot of this stuff you don't need to go to a gym for. You don't. Okay? If you have access to a gym, great. But if you don't have access to a gym, I don't want you thinking like, well, I can't do this. Of course you can. You can do almost all of it. All you need is your body weight and you need a floor for almost all of it. All right? And maybe some steps. Pretty much everybody has access to that. So strength training is another thing. And yes, we can dive deeper into this on another episode. But what I'm trying to tell you is it is accessible to you. And it's not a ton of stuff. This isn't 90 minutes in the gym 3 times a week. This is scattered throughout your day, a minute here, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, just waiting for an elevator at the bus stop, cooking some pasta, watching TV. You can do most of these things. They don't all have to be together, okay? Another thing are drills. Now, when I'm talking about drills, I'm talking about if you've ever seen somebody lay a ladder down at the track and they're, it's usually soccer, global football, or American football. You see these drills where these athletes are kind of, quick stepping through ladders. They're going side to side. They're working on their athleticism. And when you only run, you don't work on that athleticism as much as you should. Drills are a sneaky way, like hills, at working on your speed without having to run fast. There are hurdle drills you can do where you don't even need a hurdle to do this, okay? You can have an imaginary hurdle that you're going over. There are those ladder drills. You don't need a ladder to do ladder drills. You just need to do the steps associated with it. A lot of this is just getting your feet down fast, moving side to side. It's a lot of those things that you're seeing other athletes do, and you're wondering, should I do this? Yes, you should do this. I had a teammate of mine who was very injury prone, and what we found out was he really couldn't do the amount of speed work that was necessary for him to run as fast as he wanted to. So we had to find other ways for him to get faster without doing that speed work. So he couldn't do those really intense speed intervals. He couldn't do the fartlek the way that he wanted to. So what he did was he focused on drills. He did the amount of speed work he could without getting hurt, and then he added in drills. And that's how he ran fast, okay? So there's a lot of different ways you can attack this. And one of the ways that you can supplement and also incorporate into your running are drills. And like I said, this isn't hours at a time. This is 10 minutes after a run, twice a week. You know what I mean? Listen, if you do it once a week, for 10 minutes. You're going to see improvement in the long term. I'm telling you. Another thing is form. I make you do form checks all the time. But let me just tell you, when you really want to run fast, when you really try to run fast, most of us are out of control. Totally out of control. The arms start going across our body. Our head starts going all over the place. We're leaning too far forward. We're leaning too far back. Now listen, you all have your own form. There is no perfect form. Anyone that says that they can perfect your form, that's nonsense. Your form's never going to be perfect, okay? Because there is no perfect form. Nobody has it, all right? I will tell you this. You can strengthen your form. You can make your form be more efficient. You can make your form work with you. And maybe most importantly, when you get fatigued, just reminding yourself that that's when you let your form go all to crap, just remembering that is going to help you keep that form together instead of going to crap. And guess what? You're going to slow down less. You might not be able to pick up the pace when you're falling apart, but you will slow down less, which if I look back at my definition, means you're going faster than you would have. Ooh, I like that. Okay? It's also a nice way of saying you're going to slow down less, but I like going faster than you would have. All right? Again, semantics, mental gymnastics, you say what you want, I'll say what I want, means the same thing. But form is really important. Doing those strength training, doing the drills, running consistently, by the way, those all help with your form. As does, again, just checking in and doing a form check. That helps with your form too. So, form is really important. The other thing is just acknowledging that running fast can be scary. I get it. Listen, as I'm getting older, running speed work gets scary sometimes, which means I have to set myself up for success by understanding why I'm doing it, what I'm trying to do, owning my fitness, and not trying to do something I shouldn't be doing, just like every other run. But it's really important with speed work. The other thing is I have to do more of the little things now than I used to. I have to take the time to really warm up. I have to do those extra strides. I used to be able to wing it. Now, here's the thing. It's a great reminder as you get older to tell younger athletes. So if you're a younger athlete listening to this, those things help you have a better workout. Doing the warm-up, doing the stretching, doing the strides, doing the drills, understanding the workout, all that helps you have a better workout. Why would you ever set yourself up to have less than the best possible workout you could have? It's literally like someone asking you, 2 hours before the workout and you're thirsty, hey, do you want a water? And you're like, no, because I want the workout to be worse. No, you would take the water. You want to be hydrated. I mean, it's the same thing. These little things leading up to a speed run, you realize much later how important they are because without them, you can't really do the speed run. When you're younger, you can convince yourself they're not as important. It's just as important. It's just as important. Just because you can wing it, it doesn't mean it's as good of a workout without it. Okay? Don't confuse those things. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you're doing it right. Doesn't mean you're doing it as best as you can. So make sure that you acknowledge that, yes, okay, these are the little things that I need to do. And as you get older, like me, yes, fast can be scary. It's just something that I have to admit. And it reminds me, okay, let's make it less scary by being prepared. And I'm prepared by doing all of the little things. The other thing I want to mention is, because I mentioned it about everything, write about it. Okay? Those two words and those definitions, comparatively and relative, super important. And you take advantage of those words. You learn from those words only by having things to compare to. So this workout you're doing today, this run you're doing today, this fartlek tempo interval, doesn't matter, that you're doing today, you need to put it in context. And the way that you do that, the way that you measure the success of it is you have to compare it to something else. Write about your running, okay? Write about it. Learn from it, and you'll become a better coach. And a faster coach. You will, okay? And like I said earlier, all the small things. I was talking just a minute and a half ago about the small things before a speed run. But I'm talking about all the small things and not the Blink-182 song, although it's a great song. I'm talking about sleep, fuel, fluids, stress, joy, fun, all these things that you have to pay attention to. You don't need to have this ruin your life. But you should know that if you can get a better sleep, that's going to help. I mean, sorry, it is. Now, I was telling somebody earlier, like, I'm never going to tell you, like, hey, you need 8 hours of sleep, because if you can only get 6, then you're already screwed. It's about having the best possible sleep you can have. It's similar to do the things you should do before a speed run to have the best speed run you can have, right? Well, set yourself up to have the best 6 hours of sleep if you can only have 6 hours of sleep, okay? Which means, yeah, go through all of the things to set yourself up to have a successful sleep. Make sure the room's cold, cold relatively speaking. Make sure that it's dark. Make sure that you've got like some type of a, ritual before you go to sleep so your body knows it's time to go to sleep. Stay off your screens before bed. Give your eyes some time. Reading really does help. But set yourself up. It's the same thing with fueling. It's the same thing with hydrating. Like, set yourself up for success. Eat. Drink. That's how you'll be merry when you go on your run. Try to deal with stress in a more positive way. Cut out toxic people from your life. Cut out toxic situations from your life. You know what I mean? The troll on Threads or Twitter. I don't even know why you're on Twitter anymore. If you're on Twitter, get off Twitter. I don't know why I'm on Twitter anymore. The point is, get rid of these situations that don't need to be in your life. Okay? And by doing that, you're going to run faster. You're going to have more energy because you're going to be recovering better. And if you can recover better, that means you can take on harder and harder workouts than you did prior when you weren't recovering as well. Keep joy and fun in your running. I'll tell you what, just by having a diverse training, basically situation where you have different types of speed runs. You've got short runs, you've got long runs and hard runs and easy runs. You're mixing things up. Like, you're going to have more joy and more fun in your running. All right. And lastly, I'll say this because I kind of referred to myself a little bit about how I have to do the little things now. I'm not going to get faster in anything, okay, other than events I haven't tried yet, okay, which, by the way, is super fun. But the events that I've already run, my personal bests are done, okay? I'm not going to run a faster mile. I'm not going to run a faster 5K. I'm not going to run a faster 10K, 800, 400. It's just not happening. But I can slow down slowing down, which is how I can look at myself as getting faster. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to get faster than what I would have if I didn't do these things. So I can choose how I want to frame this. I can look at it as I'm going to slow down slowing down, or I'm going to get faster than I would be if I wasn't doing this. This version of me is faster than the version of me that's not doing these things. I am competing with myself. I'm competing for myself when I do this. So again, it's a little mental gymnastics, but it's honest. It's real. And that's the way I look at it. So if you're someone who's on the other side of the mountain, who is looking at a long road of just new personal bests, well, I just told you how to get faster. Now, if you're on the side of the mountain I'm on, where you're thinking about slowing down, or becoming a faster version of the other version, possible version, potential version, optional version of yourself, well, okay. This is also how you get faster. It's the same ingredients. All right? Now, listen, I'm hoping that you listen to this, maybe you listen to it twice, and you come back to me and say, I want to know more about this part that you talked about. I want to know more about that part that you talked about. I want to hear from you. What's next? What's top of the list? Like, okay, all right, I know a little bit about, the diversity of speed runs. I get it, but I want to talk a little bit more about the drills. I want to talk a little bit more about the little things. I want to talk a little bit more about the psychology of dealing with scary things like running fast, or the mentality of, looking at it as a positive of slowing down. You know what I mean? So come back to me, because I think this is one of those episodes that's going to kind of sprout out 6 or 7 other episodes, and I want them to be the episodes you want to hear. All right? But we're not done yet, because, let's be honest, we've got a Mindset Minute with the one, the only mindset coach extraordinaire, Coach Tammie Bennett of the Show Up Society. So I'm going to hand the baton off to her, and then when we come back, we'll wrap things up. So, Coach Tammie, take it away.
All right, here is my mindset tip for you about running faster. You don't have to wait until you run faster to think of yourself as a good runner. You don't need a faster time or a PR or a PB to make you feel like you are a runner. I want you to embrace that you are a bold, beautiful, badass, complete human being, just as you are right now, before you even get to that starting line and the gun going off. And definitely before you get a PR. A PR or a faster time is something that you can do because you want to challenge yourself, but it's not something you need to do to be complete or to think that you are amazing. So don't get caught up in that, well, once I run a whatever time, then I'll really be a runner, or then I'll consider myself a runner. That's some BS. You're a runner right now because you're listening to a podcast about running. So you're a runner right now, and that faster time is just because you want to challenge yourself to do it, not because you need it to think something about yourself.
As always, I mean, come on. She just nails it, doesn't she? That was a great mindset minute. Thank you, Coach Tammie, for coming back. It's been maybe 2 weeks, I think 2-3 weeks since we've had a Mindset Minute, so it's always a better episode when you're a part of it. And thank you to all of you for listening to episode 73, How to Get Faster, of Coach Bennett's podcast. If I can ask for one favor, okay, I'm waited till the end to ask, if you could rate the podcast, if you haven't already, if you could follow or subscribe to the podcast, depending on the podcast platform that you listen to, I would really appreciate it. If you could leave a review, that would be awesome. If you could share the podcast, thank you very much. And if you've listened to it and you want to post about it on Instagram or Threads or something like that, tag me and I'll thank you. I'll repost it because it really means the world to me. And just know that I really do appreciate that you are carving out a little bit of your day to listen to me. So I hope this was beneficial. I hope you had a great time. And until the next time, take care of yourself. Take care of each other, and I'll meet you on the next starting line.
Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you're not already following or subscribed to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening, well, I really wish you would because it helps a lot. Also, check out the show notes because you'll find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter, as well as all the social media sites that I'm on. Places like Threads and Facebook and Instagram and Mastodon and YouTube, and even the artist formerly known as Twitter. Whatever that dumpster fire is called today, you'll find a link to it because I'm on there. Thank you so much again for listening, and until next time, take care of yourself.